Knowledge is power. Make an impact by learning more, or hire us to do it for you. Let us focus on what we do best so you can stay focused on what you do best. Find all of our options under services, one-to-one training, subscription-based training, or accounting and business consulting. It's a testament to the fact that nobody reads or pays attention. And everybody is just in a reactive mode, and they just react before actually analyzing anything. So, and I think some of, Matthew, you may have actually experienced this, maybe not. But I was cleaning out my shopping cart. I had all these old orders that were processing, but not marked complete. So I was going through and marking them complete. This is going back like a good 6-7 months. I just hadn't bothered to do it. And it triggered emails to go out with confirmations. Now, mind you, these were just order confirmations. You know, it was a WooCommerce order confirmation. No payments were processed. And if anybody took a second to look, you could see they were dated from, 5, 4, and 3 months ago. Mm-hmm. And I got so many angry emails from people, and even a couple of phone calls and one Facebook message from somebody yelling at me saying, "I got charged 7 times today." And I was like, "No, you didn't."
7 times.
So that's going to be a fun little rant I'll be writing about tomorrow morning and sending out on Sunday.
It's one of those, thanks for paying for your friends. It's appreciated.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Actually, I'm going to write back a response to some of these people and say, "Hey, by the way, I'm stuck in Yugoslavia right now, and I lost my wallet. Can you wire me 10 grand?" I'm funny when I'm grumpy.
At least, we tend to think so ourselves. Maybe not everybody else, though.
Yeah.
Gina, right. Love your screen. Happy holidays there.
Gina always has the best webcam screen.
Happy holidays. Thank you, Matt.
You like my little snowman?
Oh.
So adorable.
That is adorable.
I'm Irish.
Do you have snow in Georgia?
Huh?
Okay, do you have snow in Georgia?
No, that's just a sun.
We're not used to
It's
that,
been
right?
70.
Did you have like serious windstorms last night, Sarah?
Yeah, we had all kinds of warnings coming up on the TV, but I haven't looked around the property to see if we lost anything.
Sarah Prevost, I'm trying desperately to let you in. No, now I think it finally let me. That was weird. Hi, good morning. How are you? All right, I'm going to start going live on Facebook. I have a friend who refers to people on Facebook as Facebookers.
I'd agree with a lot of that.
Yeah, Facebookers.
Exactly.
When I eventually get us live, which will be in about 5 or 10 minutes from now, I will use that. I will say good morning, Facebookers. So talk amongst yourselves, because this is usually this takes a while.
This is just not right. We used to have these problems in Google Hangouts, and now it has come to haunt us again in Facebook.
I'll say this, Google Hangouts was actually worse, because Google Hangouts, I would get kicked out and the meeting would die and I'd have to start a whole new one with a brand new link and nobody could get on.
And it only let 10 people in, so we were like ready with the mouse every Thursday, like click, 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 click.
That's true. I forgot.
And then if somebody got blown out, you're like click, and I'm in.
And look at us now. Now, if we were limited to that 10, it would be no problem because nobody's here. No, I'm just kidding. All right, hold on. Where am I?
Was last week the biggest participated?
Not the biggest, but the biggest in a very long time. The biggest we ever had was when I had Mike Michalowicz on, and we had 65 people live. Last week we had about 45.
Wow.
And last week, I mean, part of it I'm sure was because it was David Leary, and a lot of people were curious what he was up to, and auto entry itself. And also, we, quite frankly, and apologies to Matthew, we did a very good job of marketing it. This week was not a good week for me. And I really didn't have time to do Matthew proper justice. So Matthew, I am publicly apologizing to you for that.
You, my friend, never have to publicly apologize to me for anything.
That just means you have to do it again, Matt.
That's exactly what I was going to say. Great mind.
All right, it's preparing the live stream. Here we go. Bueller. Anyone?
Not seeing it yet.
Bueller. Go live. All right, let's see if it just takes me back to my news feed now.
Says it's now streaming, but I
Yeah,
don't see it
But on my screen, it's still setting it up.
Okay,
Setting
you
it up.
got it. You're in. I'm watching
Yep,
you now.
and right back to my news feed. All right, so now I have to browse to my page.
Well, I'm
Right,
watching us
video.
on
We're
Facebook. if
almost
it
there.
means
I wasn't
anything.
kidding when I said it takes 5 minutes. It's ridiculous. It is ridiculous. Yep, there it is. Found the live video. Now I want to share this to my group, my Facebooker group.
I want to ask you again, Seth, what video editing software do you use?
Mostly Camtasia.
Camtasia?
Yeah, I mean that's primarily what I use. I just got a new computer, and when I went to, I usually have always used what was called Windows Live Movie Maker for very light editing. So I'll get that probably from me. I use so anyway with the new computer, and I usually one of the first things I do when I'm getting set up is go to look to download Windows Live Movie Maker. Apparently that brand has been deprecated, Windows Live. So they had this Movie Maker Pro thing, which I was like, what the hell? I paid $10 for it because it's only $10. I'm not going to miss it, even if it's a piece of garbage. And for the most part, it is a piece of garbage. But like when I want to do something quick, and here's the use case. So I've got a video that I want to edit in Camtasia, and I have another video that I just really need to slap an intro on. Like when I do these Zooms, I just slap an intro on and let it run. So I'll let Movie Maker Pro do that while I can work in Camtasia on the more serious editing work that I have to do. So that's it. There's others that you can certainly play around with that are pretty good. For Mac users, there's ScreenFlow, which is, from what I've heard, better than Camtasia on the Mac. And if you really want to get serious, there's Adobe Premiere, right, Matt?
I use Power Director.
I never even heard of that.
One of the nice things about using one that nobody's ever heard of is when they have the templated little effects. They look cool and new to everybody else.
Right. I found some cool effects in this Movie Maker Pro actually that I liked. And then it gets me like curious, so I start going online to look for like effects that you can download, and like Pexels has some cool effects, and Camtasia has its own library of effects that you can download beyond what comes with the product, but it's like a $200 a year subscription or something like that, which when I'm rich and famous one day, I'll probably pay for that. But hey, you know what? I have good news. We are live. Good morning. Happy Friday. It's December 21st. We are moments away from the most, what is it, magical time of the year, the most beautiful, the most wonderful time of the year. We're in the most wonderful time of the year. Heck, every day, all year long is the most wonderful time of the year if you choose to make it so, right?
Right.
And speaking of the most wonderful time of the year and one of those wonderful days of the year, today we get to have one of the most wonderful days ever because we have our special guest, Matthew Spartacus Fulton, presenting.
You got it right. Good for you. Good for you. One of these days I'll have to tell the whole story about Spot and like make sure everybody understands why that's my nickname for so long. So thank you. Wow, it's a great group of people here. I was talking to Linda earlier today, and we were prepping for this. I'm like, it's kind of like being on your home court advantage. This is an easy time just with friends to be able to demonstrate an application and have some fun. So I think it's great. One thing I do ask of everybody, if you have questions, please ask them. I would love to answer them, love to tell you more about it and kind of give you more of the background behind Vendorsync, and always looking for good feedback. So real quickly here, I shall start off by sharing my screen. And so Vendorsync, for those who are, the way Vendorsync came to be was when we were first getting started at Parkway Business Solutions, we started to build up more and more clients, and we found ourselves actually pretty close to this time of year having too much work to get done in too little time. So because of that, I started to search out different ways to get the job done faster. And I recognized that if you look at the bank memo, most businesses can be summarized by money in the bank and money out of the bank. So if you look at the bank memo, that becomes the least common denominator. That sent me down this rabbit hole of, okay, I've got to learn bank feeds and bank memos, and what can I do to, like, you know, really streamline this process. And that ended up leading to Vendorsync and the ability to actually capture payee names from the bank memo and trying to create the most efficient way to basically get your your transactions into QuickBooks Desktop. Let me dive in by showing you the application itself. As I said, Vendorsync, to start, it is focused specifically on QuickBooks Desktop to begin with. We do that there on purpose because we felt it was a great pain point that we wanted to help solve. There are so many people nowadays that they've been converting to the cloud for efficiencies. And I think most of you guys would agree, one of the biggest efficiencies people always talk about, especially with QuickBooks Online, would be their bank feed rules, right? What if you didn't have to sacrifice the power of QuickBooks Desktop, but you could still have the efficiency of better bank rules, like the cloud for desktop? It would be great, right? So with Vendorsync, what we've done is we create an application that connects with QuickBooks, and it's going to pull up your entire vendor list and your chart of accounts directly from your desktop company file. The reason that's important, in QuickBooks Desktop, you have the ability, you can come in and you can very easily, if you wanted to go to each vendor, you can go to your vendor center. You could come in and you can edit each vendor and choose an account that you want to set up as an expense. But who's going to go through here and do 8 clicks on every single vendor to try to set it all up and get your whole list nice and clean for you to get the extra benefits?
I will. I like spending lots of extra time on things.
You do? Perfect. Yeah. Well, what if you could do the same thing, but instead of doing it that way, you could have a whole list and you can literally go through and do, if I've got subscriptions here, we can choose it, go to the next one, choose it. You can basically create those relationships a lot faster through Vendorsync from each vendor to each account. So when you pull transactions in, it's going to auto-suggest the categories for you. There's one key part of this, though, that only works if the bank file actually has the proper payee name. So there's a lot of different apps out there that do a great job of trying to process data, and they're always trying to give you the ability to put a payee name, but you're always guessing. You don't know if you've got it exactly right compared to the way you have it in your QuickBooks Desktop file. If it's not exactly right, it's not going to do any good. So that's why we actually using the web connector, we sync up the whole vendor list. So when you pull in transactions, which we'll do right now, you will be able to process those transactions even faster. This screen that we're on right now, it's my primary screen where all your transactions will be listed. Let's come in and I'm going to import some transactions real quick. Go browse. And we'll come to our nerd demo here, open, and upload the file. So this is standard bank download. You go to your bank, you can bring it in, and it's going to populate straight into the application. One of the things that I didn't quite mention earlier is when we do that sync of the vendors in the chart of accounts, you're going to notice on the side here underneath accounts, it's going to list every one of your bank account and credit card accounts that you would have in that company file. Since we know you're going to be using that information, those accounts to populate transactions, we provide them immediately off to the side. That way you can choose an account and you can pull transactions right into it. The next important thing, when you're on each of these accounts, QuickBooks Desktop requires every import file to have a specific Intuit ID number. Seth, have you ever had, or have you heard from people in the past where they would go to try to import a file into QuickBooks Desktop, but it wouldn't take it? It would say like a branding error or just kind of gave an error, wouldn't accept it?
I can't remember. It's been so long since I played with desktop.
Okay. Well, if you ever try to do like a smaller credit union, sometimes you'll get this branding error that says that it's not recognized. That's because they don't have a specific Intuit ID number. So if you have that situation, we have you set up with each account an Intuit ID. I'll use Chase in this example. Just type it in, set it up and save it once. And now every time you export transactions from this account, it's going to auto-populate that from then on. And that's part of the way it knows which account to go into, helps eliminate the possibility of duplications, and again, ensures that your transactions can go in. So now looking at the screen, we've got our transactions. You're probably noticing we've got a whole bunch of these highlighted rows, and then we have some that do not, right? What we've done is one of our features is for it to auto-suggest payee names. Based on the list of vendors that you pull up, it will look to see if the vendor name is actually within the memo. If it sees it, it will auto-suggest and give you the special indicator onto the side. So once you know and you've kind of worked with the file for a bit, you actually can come through and very quickly with a single click accept all of those different transactions. So in this file, I've got about 177 transactions right now, okay? If I come in, and I'm gonna be a little lazy and go blindly go accept all suggested. Of course, you would go through, review them, but for the purpose of the demo, we'll go through real fast. So now all of those, you're gonna notice it has a name on it, like notify. And if we've set up that category relationship off to the side, we also have a category listed for them. So now if I was to come through, let's do a search or a sort by category, and we'll get to the blanks. You'll see how few we have left that we actually have to process at that point. So through here, I'll show you another way we can pull through some. We've got actually, without touching anything, oh, wrong page. My filter, try that again. We'll pull back up, there we go. Now we have all the names that were here. We will have quite a few less left to do. But let's move past it real quick, and I'll show you one of my favorite features is actually the filter capability. So if you're going through and you're trying to find and process as many of the transactions as bulk as possible, you can use our filter by doing something like MSFT for Microsoft, and it's going to pull up any of the Microsoft transactions that are there. So I can then do a single click, do select vendor, and I can type in Microsoft and update them all at once.
That's awesome. That's just like using the smart filters in Excel. That's really cool.
It's really actually, Tiffany had mentioned on Gina's show, it gave us a great idea that really for small business owners even, it's the ability to batch edit transactions, which you can only do if you have the accountant version of QuickBooks. So now a lot more people can get through process faster.
You do the category in bulk like that too?
So the category, what would happen, at the moment you'll see with Microsoft, there's no category there, right? That's because my vendor list, if I come back here and I look up Microsoft, I don't actually have one selected yet. So
you assign a category once per vendor once you have a vendor that's sort of recognized in the list, and then it will always categorize it there.
Exactly.
But what if it needs to be different? What if I have staples and today it's office supplies, but tomorrow it's a new printer?
It's a great question. That's the reason why when we process this, we're creating a bank file that you're going to then use and import it into QuickBooks like you normally would, because it gives you that ability to make those final changes.
Okay.
So you could actually, you would have that unique knowledge. It would categorize it like normal, but we do not push through the back end because we don't want to cause duplication, and we want to leave the power of the decision at the accountant level, or I should say the user level.
So if I see all the Microsoft and I go, oh, it doesn't have a default, I hesitate and then pop over to the vendor list and give it one? Is that the flow?
You could. However, the reason I didn't show that part yet is it would be really frustrating if you're going through and you put in a vendor, right, and it doesn't have that category. So all of a sudden now you have to stop, you have to go over and add the category in and come back and do this other part. What we've found is most people are going to have obviously a fully set up QuickBooks company file. So they're going to have 200, 300, 400 vendors in there. So when they start to do the process, nobody wants to eat their dog food and have to go and categorize all 400 before they get started. I mean, that's just not realistic. So instead, when I go and I export these transactions, every time I have a vendor that does not have a category, it's going to ask me to categorize it before I create my export.
So that's quicker. Yeah, absolutely.
And
And
then
does the category flow back to QuickBooks and now populate the, oh, cool.
Yep. So the next step from that is you actually have a sync to QuickBooks button. You would process that sync, and that would make it so it's all updated. So when it finally spits out that special QBO file and you pull it in, it's going to then recognize those relationships. So Sarah, this feature is for you. We have these checkboxes at the top here in advanced controls. Edit dates. So if you need, you can do your accrual based, come in, change the date as you wish. Maybe it was the day before. And then also we have.
It's mainly checks.
Yes, exactly.
Because you don't want to post checks on the day they cleared. You want to post checks on the day they were mailed.
So you could actually sort by check number, or here, because we have it in the memo, I could also type in check, and that would pull these up, and I could say that this one was, I think I've got Bruce Wayne in here. I'll be Wayne. Being sneaky with it. Change different names onto all of these, right? Come in, and maybe this was actually supposed to be from the first or the prior month. You get the point. So it's saving all of these details on each one. I like the little checkbox. It's kind of like a lock unlock feature. Makes it to where you don't accidentally get into it and start messing with something you don't mean to. So now if I clear my filter here, another column you'll notice here, export date. It's there on purpose because as you're using this tool is extremely, extremely powerful when you're doing cleanup work, write-up work. So if you've got a whole year of transactions that you need to get through quickly, that's a best case scenario, right? You pull in all of the different files. You actually would have a file upload log so you can see how many files you brought in, which account it's going to. And you could go all transactions. So if you have multiple accounts that you want to process all the information, you could hit the all transactions and process them all at the same time instead of doing just one account at a time like normal bank feeds would do. And then the export date, as I was talking about, that will show you when we do the export. So next month, you jump back in, maybe you're just importing once a month, doing the processing and then moving on. You can use that to kind of sort or filter to make sure you're only exporting the new transactions. Again, trying to make sure you're only pulling in the items you want. You could do one at a time selection or select them all. So let's real quickly, I'm going to come into here and I've got this set up to, we'll go to our larger amount, and we haven't processed all the transactions at the moment, but I'm going to still take this. We've got to our 250, and I'm going to quickly go select, actually let's go to 100. And we'll go select here in a second. So I can export my transactions. Boom. Here's our pop-up screen. So on here, for Intuit, I haven't, for that vendor, put a specific category. Now, obviously, Intuit could be quite a few different ones. So this
I think in terms of default, what you would use the most, right?
Exactly. And you can always go in and you can change it as you would need to. So I'm going to put on here merchant account fees, Microsoft, going to be software, Office Depot, office supplies, PayPal, merchant account fees. Now I've got my sync to QuickBooks. So I'm going to click on sync to QuickBooks. It's going to give me a little pop-up. And I always like to have my web connector up next to this because it can show you the way the sync works is it will auto sync. You can set it to auto sync basically once every minute. I like to display this as well because it kind of visually shows you, even though we're showing it here, what's going on exactly, like how long it takes. If depending on the cycle, sometimes it may take that full minute as we're seeing. But once that's done, we will actually see this will change over, and it will have pushed the accounts as well as push the vendors all at the exact same time. Again, we do the push accounts because, hey, maybe your chart of accounts, you're going through and you realize that all of a sudden you need to add on new accounts or sub accounts. You can do so from the program, and it will push directly into QuickBooks, of course. So there go our accounts. Now it's about to do our vendors. Hit close, drops my file. Okay. Now I'm going to come over to QuickBooks, go to banking, we'll go to bank feeds, and let's go import a web connected file. Go to my downloads. It's going to be my most recent one, of course. And you'll notice the dating. It shows the beginning and ending dates of the period of time that we were exporting. Plus it's showing the name of the account. If I had checking 1, 2, 3, 4, it would have shown that as well. So when you're working with a lot of different company files, you'll be able to tell what was the exports, the whole point. So now I'm going to go open. And again, this is basically pulling it into the QuickBooks bank feed area. When it does this, I'll show you, we do not have any bank feed rules whatsoever inside of this. Let's see here. QuickBooks is going a little slow apparently. Go to my banking center. There we go. I was being too impatient like usual. So finally said it had been read in. We've got 149 transactions. Hit our transaction list. Pulls in, and right off the bat again, we didn't go through all the transactions. 84 of those immediately have been set up that quickly with names, categories, everything. If I go to my rules, none. So where this really comes into play, especially for desktop, when you start creating a lot of bank feed rules, it dramatically slows down the program, dramatically, okay? This eliminates that concern. Not to mention, there's also the good old fun time, if you didn't use this, that you're coming in and maybe you're trying to put in, you know, Dr. McNeil or was it McNeil Vet? You start typing this stuff in, right? And if you have to add somebody new in, if you hit the wrong button, I guess it's not, we'll put the wrong thing in. If you need to add somebody in, what would happen is you better save all the work you did, or it's going to actually eliminate those right away. That's
yes, I remember that driving me crazy. I used to curse like a sailor at QuickBooks over that many times.
So, did you forget? You get halfway through the list and you go, oh, I'll do this real quick. We lose everything that you just did. Yeah.
Like I was just doing. So like I actually thought I had.
Even if you resort the list, I recall, you'll lose everything. So
if you take the time, if you actually go through and process the information here first, it's a much more efficient way to go through all of this by getting the actual payee name into these. So let's go charter, right? There's a lot of tips and tricks of ways that you can kind of process through these the fastest. Obviously getting them close to each other. I love this filtering capability. This was a small group. You would do your largest ones first, right? And so Acuity, I don't happen to have it in here. Let's do an add a new vendor. Let's put a category to it right now. So it's all in the flow, no problem. Okay. We really spend a lot of time trying to think through how should these things go in? What's the proper workflow? So it's streamlining your clicks. So as I like to say, the least number of clicks wins. Any questions so far through this?
Let me check the live Facebook feed because we do have a couple of people there, but of course Facebook is being Facebook, so I'm having trouble. All of a sudden the whole video filled up my screen and I lost the comments. The
only thing I'm thinking of is, of course, I've got 1099s on the brain right now. We've been testing is when you set up a new vendor, and I have this with any program that sits next to QuickBooks and will help us set up a new vendor, is that I need to go in and populate, is it eligible and all. There's more fields that I need to fill in. This is great for quickly getting your bank caught up. And a vendor name is, but as far as all the other information, you just have to know to go back and do it.
And you can go vendor to vendor to vendor, obviously, because we're focusing primarily on the banking area. We still provide the full vendor detail that you can add in, including the ability to mark 1099.
Wow, I just looked at the screen.
We're still going to fancy this one screen is one that we haven't fancied it up yet to match everything else. So it's going to look a little prettier. And
bigger maybe?
Oh yeah.
I got old eyes.
Yeah.
Okay, so you don't have to just say name just to get it going.
That was the simplest.
To name on check and things like that. Okay.
The other future feature that we will end up implementing is having the ability for like an alias. So on this page, there will be times, I like to use AT&T as an example when you're talking about vendors, right? Because AT&T is probably not going to be how it's going to show up in a memo. So if we ended up having a couple aliases that would be available, you could do AT space T, and that could then capture. So you're in a sense putting in things that would be more common to show up in that bank memo. So more of that auto suggest can become, it really becomes more powerful. At the moment, when you work with a vendor, you actually have, of course, your vendor name and your company name. You can manipulate that to actually do the vendor name here and change it, and it will actually search for both when it's trying to do the auto suggest payee name. So you get kind of one alias as it is at the moment. Let's see here. One of the other things that I pulled up a while back on QBox, we did a special that was called the Remote Accountant's Toolbox. So again, kind of taking a look at how the QuickBooks Online workflow would be and trying to create something that would be just about as efficient as QuickBooks Online, as close to as you could get. We set up a workflow where it starts off with QBox, uses Vendorsync as your bank feed importer, if you will, and then processing everything through Vendorsync. So the way that works for the whole thing, if you're a remote accountant, you go in, you grab the company file with QBox, you bring it back to your computer so it's being synced. While that's happening, if you utilize Vendorsync for the bank feeds, it gives you the ability to go over there. You can input your check details or have the screen of check images pulled up. And if you export your bank file from Vendorsync, pull that down to your computer, then you go through, import it into our app, Vendorsync, and you can very quickly process all the transactions. You'd have the check images. I'm a dual monitor kind of person, so you have your check images on one screen, quickly typing them in through Vendorsync, and then when you export that new bank file from Vendorsync, it's going to have all the information populated with those relationships, so you'd end up having more and more of them basically pulled in and auto-suggested. So it's a really, really efficient way if you're using desktop to get your work done. Another important area that people usually ask about, by going through the bank area, again, we did this on purpose. If you have somebody that's in office that's doing some of the work, if they're cutting checks, if they're putting in bill and bill payments, when you go through this way, it will match to the existing items. Again, no duplication is the goal out of all of this. So when it pulls in, it will literally pop up different and say auto match. In a perfect world where you have an amazing person, boots on the ground that are doing just a great job and everything's in a system, you could theoretically then import and everything would auto match, and it's a way to kind of auto reconcile. the account, because if there's anything missing, you would know what you need to put in, and it should make your month-end reconciliations that much faster. But the key is it matches. Any questions at this time?
I'd like to see different ways to bring it in. Like,
So, and I had a question, Matt, going back
CSV
to,
files.
sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just, I have Expensify, Divi, and other programs that will give me information in just comma delimited files. And I would love to come to here temporarily to get it really squeaky clean and then bring it in.
We look at Vendorsync not as a competitive app, but a complementary app to a lot of the different processes out there. So if you're using LedgerSync, the ability to export the data and then clean it up faster and push it in, this is great for that. If you're using HubDoc, take their CSV, pull that CSV, pull it into this, process it, spit it out, and ready to go. So anything of that nature, you could be doing that, and it's gonna, we have the ability, you can import Excel files. You have to do a little bit of mapping, of course, because you got to get the information in the right places, but you'd be able to do even more with it. Thanks to Seth actually, I was talking to him last week. We are currently working on, it's going to be a short bit of time, we're working on a CSV export or a basic Excel flat file export also. So people will be able to do more with what they want as well.
And just so people understand why I suggested that and where I want to go with it is because that flat file could then be configured to be imported into QuickBooks Online.
EBO, I knew it.
And I think that that would actually be a better way to code bank feeds than, I mean, QuickBooks Online's bank feeds is definitely, in my opinion, superior to QuickBooks Desktops, but I think this would still be better in terms of a way to, just organize the data, prep it, and then import it and save time.
I will add on, and I can't go into much detail yet about it. I don't want my developer Casey to kill me. I have an ace up my sleeve on that one. I've got a unique process already designed specifically for QuickBooks Online. I do not expect that to be something that we'll be able to immediately push out to everybody for, at least a good month, but it's already designed, spec'd out, checked out, and working, that we would be able to, instead of having to use another application to then pull it in, we would be able to have it set up to where it could work pulling in things to QuickBooks Online and triggering bank rules. So more to come there.
I volunteer to test that.
Good, because you already signed up to test it.
I'll get on that bandwagon.
Right now, so Vendorsync is something that we've been working on for probably about 2.5 years. And I'm really proud of the way it looks, the way it works, and it's how reliable it is. We are absolutely looking for feedback. We are hoping that people will help me. I love that, Sarah. You are awesome. I'm a VSync fan. I love it.
Look at Linda.
Linda, thank you. You guys are awesome. I'm looking for additional feedback.
So Matt, I have some feedback.
Thank you.
I do love the way Vendorsync looks. I mean, if you're used to using QuickBooks Desktop, it'll be a breeze to use. But the one thing, I have a thing about names. And so on your menu on the left-hand side, you have chart of accounts, but on the right hand in the actual window, it's called categories. So I think that it would be easier if people could understand chart of accounts is categories.
Consistency.
Yeah, that's an Intuit thing, especially with Quick In.
I absolutely
Quick In with categories.
Intuit. Everything is accounts with Intuit. You have checking accounts, you have chart of accounts, you have vendor accounts. It's confusing to people.
Well, it says account selected and select an account. Where are you seeing?
On the, I think she's talking about here.
Right where you're at.
Category.
Yeah, so I would maybe name it COA accounts right where your cursor is at. on
got
the, so
I
that,
don't know what a COA is, though.
right, we know, well,
To account. Would
What
that
if it's
work?
account?
but it would have category, and that would match what's on the right-hand side. That's,
You're saying
Something
switch
that
it to category instead of switching everything to account?
no, just the name on the menu. So
Oh,
that
okay.
people know that the chart of accounts is the category.
Oh, okay.
Well, so now the unique part of it, that's phenomenal feedback. So thank you, first off. The items that are going to show up here are all of the bank accounts. So if I come to my chart of accounts real quick and I want to add a new bank account, let's go checking 2, 3, 4, 5. And again, just real quickly, I keep showing checking. It absolutely works with credit cards too, just so you know.
Okay, when you say accounts, you're only talking about cash, check, and bank accounts.
Yeah,
I mean,
because those are the ones that you're going to be pulling the actual.
It's almost like source accounts, or I don't know what would be a good differentiate. Yeah.
Exactly.
What that area would be different than the chart of accounts. It's almost like the register for the balance sheet.
Financial accounts.
I don't know. We'll have to brainstorm that one.
Yeah. It's funny, the power of words, right? I mean, that really does make a difference.
No, absolutely. And that's why I was bringing it up. I love the way your program looks. I love the way it works. I was just thinking, you want to keep naming things the same, like categories should be categories everywhere. And if you're in there and you're trying to figure out where did the categories live, they're actually the chart of accounts.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
So one of
Those
the
are just selected accounts from the chart of accounts. So it's sort of like bill and invoice. That trips up programmers.
Yeah. A little secret that some of you know, I'm a colorblind accountant that likes to do websites and such. So we have one of the things that we're working on right now is making sure some of the consistency of colors are consistent. Because
the royal blue.
So,
I can help with that. I'm very visual.
Oh, I would love it. Color palettes are not my specialty.
We need contrast when you're looking at data. There's just too much light gray going on everywhere. It's not just you.
It is. And so where that really comes into play, that absolutely affects the usability of an application. How it visually is laid out, it will make or break an app because when you first dive into it, you probably within the first 30 seconds make an opinion about the application just by the way it looks. And that's where the feedback is so important because we want to make sure we get at least another 30 seconds from them so they can start to play with it a little bit more. Thank you for that feedback. I appreciate it. And Sarah, I'm going to take you up on that because I need to
call me. Can I hide that left menu once I get going? Because that's another thing. Get it as large as possible.
I completely agree with you. That is something that is on our roadmap to be able to do. It isn't quite there yet, but we do want to have a collapsible. Ultimately, we would love in the future to have it set up where people can kind of choose their own color schemes. So,
Matt?
Yeah.
Greg has a question about categories. Can you add a category in VS or do you have to do it in QBDT first?
You can do it all. So the categories are your accounts. You can easily add a brand new one if you want to. What I'll do actually is instead workflow process, right? So if I come in and the wharf, we'll type in the wharf, type it right. I don't have the vendor, right? So let's add the vendor, very easy. And then for an account, we don't have what we want. So now we're getting really extreme, right? We're going like end type thing. So account name, we're going to say Greg's account. Account type, he's an expense for sure. A good expense though, Greg.
Yeah.
At least you didn't say he was a liability.
Exactly.
He upgraded himself.
You can even make it a sub account if you need to. Okay.
Uh-huh. Okay.
And you can do account number, of course. So
Oh, nice.
add the account. Now it's in there. Add the vendor. Got the wharf.
He says I'm an asset minus the ET. Great.
And it should actually be populating there, so I'll double check that real quick. But yeah, you can easily add it in right off the bat. So if I go Greg's here, so we now have the Greg's account already in there. If I go to the wharf, looks like it didn't quite grab Greg's, but we can check that out too. So now if I come back, we've got it. Wharf, Greg's account. Another kind of, some people would do the workflow this way. Let's do something kind of funny. See how we got dial pad here, or let's go download it as, and we'll show the bank memo. We've got dial pad here. So dial pad, we got a couple in DigitalOcean, a couple, right? I'm going to go back to Vendorsync. Let's go to my vendors. Let's type in dial pad. So I don't see it. Let's do a quick add new vendor. And we'll put this to telephone.
I like your vendor screen better than Intuit's.
Thank you.
Well, it's all on one page. I mean, you're not clicking.
Yeah. What will happen is it'll be more of like a card feel. It will just end up matching to more of everything else. And then the other one I said was, dang it, what was it? We're going to do DigitalOcean. That's what it was. So DigitalOcean, I was hoping it would already be in here. So if basically what I was trying to show is if you have something, again, we didn't have a vendor category relationship done, you can very easily come in, add them in. And then if I come here, I'm going to go sync. Let's go sync vendors. I'm going to quickly pull this up. Watch 84 change in a second here as it processes through. It will actually start to recognize the different items and change them, put it into the system for you. So if
after you imported?
If the transaction, I should clarify it a little bit. So if let's say you have transactions that the vendor, you put the vendor name on already,
Right.
and it exported had it. Let me find one that was, the export, I apologize. The export we did, we updated all of them. So if it had the pay name in there, you can actually go in and it's making real-time adjustments. So anytime that you're going in, if I go to QuickBooks, let's go to Vendor Center. Let's go to DigitalOcean or DialPad. Hey, wait a second here. It will pull that up. That's giving me a hard time right now. It will actually pull up that name, and you would see that it's going to have the category automatically set into it, because you can go through and you can edit categories very quickly too.
Okay, so the information is temporary in your program. Then you're syncing with QuickBooks. It's still temporary to the general ledger until you accept everything. But you're saying once it comes into QuickBooks, it's still temporary. You
Correct.
can still tweak.
It still will show the change. It basically would show those changes in the banking center.
Yeah.
You make the modification.
It doesn't bring in duplicates. It actually looks at it.
Correct. So now think about, think of it this way. If you pulled the stuff in, right, you could literally on one screen, you could have Vendorsync open and you could quickly add new vendors as you're looking at stuff that you didn't have vendors before as a kind of a workflow tweak. So if you needed to quickly process them, you could do that. And then when that happens, as long as you have the actual appropriate name in each transaction, or if you typed in the name to the transaction, it would automatically give you the category from that point. So little neat stuff. The last thing I'll share with you guys again, just with this guide is something I made for QBox that goes through the whole concept of the remote accountant's toolbox. Tells you about each of the different applications and then the actual steps in the process of how we would do it. This is available on the Vendorsync website. So if you go in, you can actually, you'll find it under the blog. I will post in the link in just one moment. You can download this and be able to use it as a reference for anybody that's interested to try it out. We've also been building out through our support area. If you've ever had any technical challenges or issues with the bank, with QuickBooks bank feeds, we have like all the error codes in there to kind of help refer to and help you out to understand, you know, what any challenge could be to try to help you through it. So here you can get the workflow guide, and I'll put this into our link or chat. Let's go, boom, chat. There we go.
I just thought of something.
Yes.
The ones of us that are so comfortable in desktop,
Yeah.
we've got to catch somebody up for a year or two. And then we've got a journal ledger that's really clean and looking good. And then we want to move to QBO.
Mm-hmm.
Then my app would be good for just bringing in comparative financials if you don't want all the transactions to come from desktop.
Remember I was telling you, Sarah, that I felt you and I could probably have some great time doing some cross promotions with each other?
I love how you're saying, okay, these are all the tools in the desktop world, but we have so many that are in the QBO world. We need to relate how we can move these tools. Once we have good data.
Yeah.
How do we move that into QBO? Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. And again, I am extremely, extremely aware that the power is going to be offering the QuickBooks Online version as well.
Mm-hmm.
When I started down this process, I really have to say thank you to Maurice Berdugo with Ledgersync, because he opened up so many opportunities for me to play with so many different accounting applications that I've mapped out processes for QuickBooks Online, for accounting CS, all of these different ones, because there's these little nuances. So we've developed them, but we went to desktop first because we saw that as the first pain point, and because truly there's 600 apps in the QuickBooks Online App Store. The desktop app environment is kind of underrepresented, and we felt this was a great way that people could bring that power, like I said before, bring the power of cloud accounting to desktop, as well as the price of online keeps going up. I mean, it's a great program. Full transparency, we use it too, but the price keeps going up. We have at least 10 clients of ours that never even access their financials. So we're pulling them back into desktop, running them there instead of paying a monthly subscription for those clients. And we're able to do the same efficiency-wise with desktop and save a whole bunch of money. So as we build this up, this is our first iteration, we will launch other ones, including a QuickBooks Online ability too. Any last questions from anybody? How about you, Seth? I know.
I'm all good. I'm just waiting for you to get it set up for QuickBooks Online.
You got it.
I literally don't use desktop anymore. I've had my new computer up and running for 2 weeks, and I haven't even installed desktop. I do need desktop eventually, because every once in a while somebody needs their file upgraded to QuickBooks Online. So I need desktop in order to do that. It's kind of like, a while back people started to say, why do you still need Internet Explorer to install Chrome? So I still need QuickBooks Desktop so I can migrate to QBO.
And so you can go from QuickBooks Online to QuickBooks Desktop. You need Internet Explorer. But anyways.
Oh, there you go.
It's, again, when we first started this process, literally it's funny how life works, right? Right after we converted all of our desktop clients to QuickBooks Online, I came up with a QuickBooks Desktop application. So we use both now. We see the power of it. It's enabled us to have certain clients that just weren't willing to make that change. And especially for write-up work, that type of stuff, we can do it more efficiently and keep the profitability inside our firm. That's a big, big part of it. So
Cool.
Seth, I really appreciate you taking the time to let me show this, especially a desktop platform in a online world, right? So
I appreciate you taking the time to come out here and show it and give me the day off.
anytime. Linda, you got any questions from you?
Me?
Yep. You know this stuff pretty well, right? So
Yeah, I've seen the demo many times. So no, I agree with Sarah though. You need to make the print bigger because I complain all the time I can't see. So you'll find that out in a few years.
Yes. Okay. So a little bit larger print.
Yeah. I've been trying to think of a way to, my mind's spinning in 8 directions because we're coming up on that season of fixing messes. And sometimes, and I've always been one to say you can fix a mess, but I can fix anything. And then I've said those words, and then it had to actually take the data and start over because it's just going to be faster. And I'm just trying to think in my head, spinning like this would work maybe better and more efficiently. Actually could use Sarah's app to bring over the beginning balances and then use yours to process the whole year's worth of data to make it clean and then push it out to QBO for the customer in a brand new file. And, it might be actually faster and will certainly be cleaner,
Yeah. That's a great, point. I mean, literally, if you took the old file from the date you knew that it was good, balance exporter, pull the information out super quick and easy, pull that into a new company file.
Yeah.
Then you take all of your banking transactions, pull all of them in for multiple accounts. They go into the right accounts, of course, but then you, through here, hit your all transactions. So if you've got 3 accounts, whatever, they're still organized in their separate accounts, but you could process all of them that much faster and then export each individual one. Once you process through the data and it goes imported in, they'll be recognized. Most of the stuff would be recognized through the banking center. And you've literally done cleanup work in probably one of the most efficient ways possible.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. How about, okay, I want to play with it.
Bye, Gene.
I have a client. I mean, I have some common delimited files that I'd like to map and just play with it. What is the, do you have an accountant's program or what's the cost? What's the price point? How do you bill?
The pricing is an area that right now we are in what we call private beta. It is set up to where everybody that's interested, now is a great time. Test it out, especially before, I know the end of the year is like right around the corner, but play with it. Jump in. You're easily able to access it and see the power of what it can do for you. So when we hit the new year and you've got all the different people calling you to do rebuilds, you can capture the new business, the new money. All we ask in return is feedback. Pricing is one of the most difficult things to deal with. I've been all day yesterday working through it. I apologize. I don't want to comment on the pricing at the moment because I'm trying to talk to some very intelligent people like Sarah there that can help give me some feedback so we do it right the first time. But we'll be releasing or announcing that very soon.
Awesome.
And let's see here, comments wise in here. I don't know if there's anything in Facebook. I didn't have that pulled up. But
I checked. There's not. There's just Tiffany and Heather saying hi to one another at the exact same time, apparently.
Hi, Tiffany and Heather both. So Heather Satterley, I believe, right? Heather, I hope your presentation went well with Zapier makes you happier. Zapier. So, Carolyn, thank you for the nice comment in regards to the presentation. Really, really appreciate it. I'm happy to do private demonstrations with anybody and everybody, really kind of walk you through it, step by step. I will also help, because it's a desktop app, it does utilize the web connector. We've done something pretty unique with the web connector that no matter how many company files that you do, because you can process, it's already set up and organized to do multiple company files. You add it on, you install a QuickBooks Web Connector one time. And then once it's installed on that computer, you just link the different company files to that one web connector. You also have the ability, since Vendorsync is web-based, let's say right now I'm in my office. I don't get everything done. I need to go home and I need to work on this from home. You can link to another computer, just install a web connector there, and you can map the same Vendorsync information, the data, to a different location as well. In other words, if you wanted to have your client, we're setting up multi-tenant capability and like multi-user capability, both you and your client could be processing this data. So you could have your client go in, categorizing stuff, and then you could push it in if you wanted to also. So we're trying to build out a very robust user access levels.
And Matthew, I always talk about QBO, but I have enterprise solutions customers because they're not eligible for QBO in the state that it's in now. Works with enterprise too, right?
Absolutely. Thank you for bringing that up. You know, it's so easy to forget when you say desktop that it doesn't always translate to everybody as enterprise. Mm-hmm. So absolutely, QuickBooks Desktop, QuickBooks Enterprise, 100% works with both of them. Absolutely. Tested, tried, and proven. The only limitations you ever run into have to do with Intuit. If you have a QuickBooks program that's 2.5 years old, if you push an update, they turn off the bank feeds. They turn off a lot of features. If you don't do that update, it doesn't get turned off.
Matthew, Tiffany actually has a question. She's assuming that the Canadian version of QuickBooks Desktop is not supported.
I've actually used it in the past. Tiffany, an area that I need to reconfirm with you is because the bank feeds are a bit different. I've made a request for a new version of QuickBooks Desktop from Canada so I can double check it. It would still be able to do the full relationship between the vendors and the accounts. That would be fine. But the difficulty is the bank feed window is different, if I remember correctly. Mm-hmm. But I'm trying to check that actually ASAP, and I will connect with you personally and let you know. So.
You have a new Vendorsync fan, Sarah's mom.
Hi, Sarah's mom.
Good morning.
Keep muting because my dog is snoring over here.
Dennis, do you do much with desktop? Sometimes.
No, I actually don't do very much with QuickBooks anymore other than my tax clients. And I use QBox on the few tax clients that I work with another bookkeeper, and we share the QBox, the desktop files, but I don't really do much in the way of QuickBooks anymore. I'm too busy with taxes.
Well, that's awesome. Be sure to let your bookkeeper know.
Pardon me?
Be sure to let that bookkeeper know about Vendorsync.
Yeah, one thing I was wondering, I noticed on your website, you have references to QBox and what's the other one? Legislation. Are they doing reciprocal type deals with you in terms of promoting your product?
You know what? When I put this stuff up, I put these up because I believe in the applications, and it was done because it was a great workflow, and I'm proud to actually help promote them. We haven't ironed out some kind of a cross-promotion concept. They're on there because they deserve it.
Right.
They're good apps.
But I'm just thinking that maybe we could all get together and have some sort of cross promotions, get a discount on, that kind of thing.
That for sure. Chris is amazing with QBox. I know he would be fully open to it, and we'll talk about it for sure. Maurice, I'm positive he will. We talked about trying to put together some kind of a package pricing for the whole remote accountant's toolbox concept. So thanks for actually validating that there would be of interest in that. And
that would be nice. A bundle.
What I was thinking is a combined user's manual integrating all three products rather than trying to do it piecemeal. You know what I'm saying? Have like a user's manual that incorporates all three and how they work in harmony and that kind of thing.
I did create this document. It's not as detailed about all of it, but I could add more to it. It goes in and literally tells you like the different steps you would take. So step one would be accessing the client file. You know, the next one would be pulling the information, the check details from Vendorsync, what information to enter into and what's the best way to do it. Because I literally work with all of these different applications, it was very easy for me to like work out the workflow. And this document is downloadable from the Vendorsync website. You just fill out this quick little workflow guide here, or request, and it'll shoot you over an email with it in it automatic.
Or another thought, maybe you could combine, you all three could combine to do a comprehensive video from start to finish, how you would integrate all the products.
It's a good call. I'll work on that. I can do that pretty easy. I like video.
Yeah, I mean, I like video too in terms of, because it's a lot more efficient, I think, at least for me, when I try to plow through 20 pages or something. Yeah.
It's a very good point. So I'll work on making a video that can go along with this. We did do a live webinar for this, but that's different. And the webinar is actually viewable right through here.
Right.
And we'll go through the whole process of it. But I think what you're talking about is actually a better idea, where it's literally a great video that's specifically just me kind of showing the process a little more detailed than trying to do it for a webinar.
Or maybe you, Chris, and the other guy getting together and having a joint video where you promote yourselves or cross promote and go through a detailed from start to finish how you would use all three products in conjunction together.
That's a great idea. I like it. I'll add that in. I'll let you know as soon as we finish that. And then Sarah, that means we're gonna have to do one too.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, Sarah too. Yeah.
Well, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for the time again. It's been an absolute pleasure to join into this group in this community. I mean, I got to tell you that my perspective of accounting and accountants has changed ever since meeting up with Seth and meeting all of you guys. It's really made this a lot of fun. So thank you so much.
Cool. Well, thank you, Matthew. I appreciate you showing us Vendorsync. And I guess we'll be seeing a few of you in the webinar later today. Go big in 2019. That's at 11 o'clock. So you still have like a little bit of time if you haven't signed up yet and you want to. Today we're going to be talking about techniques for getting on the phone and making it easier to make that conversation more comfortable so you don't feel like you're selling. So we're going to teach you how to sell without selling. And we're going to teach you some techniques that I use on the phone where pretty much any client I ever get on the phone, I have a very high closing rate. Let's put it that way. It's very rare that somebody doesn't sign up with me once I get on the phone with them. The only reason they ever don't is because they simply can't afford it, and I am too busy to lower my rates for people at this point. So anyway, if you want to learn how I talk on the phone with prospective clients, and even after they become clients, it still fits because there's things you want to talk to your clients about in terms of add-on services and other things. So you're kind of always selling, but the trick is not to actually sell. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. Next week, we're going to do a deep dive, similar to what we did here in the Zoom a couple of weeks ago on, setting your goals and pricing, but we're going to go much deeper. Then I'm going to kind of pick up where that webinar, where that Zoom leaves off and dig in and show people how to go further and further with that, because having that stuff nailed down really tight will go back to making you much more confident when you're on those phone conversations with your prospective clients and clients. So hopefully we'll see some of you later on today at 11 o'clock. If you want the link to register, let me know. I will get that to you. You know how to find me. And we will see you all around the web.
Mm-hmm.
Bye.
Bye.
Merry Christmas.
Merry
To
Christmas.
us, we don't see you until next week. Bye.
Happy to everybody.